So continuing to talk about cloning and using cloning in a non-destructive manner to make it look like you've erased parts of your image, I'm going to go over this example. This is kind of a straightforward example because I don't have a lot of perspective to worry about. The image itself, the building, already has a lot of lines and kind of mixed color splashes, so it's kind of easy to mix it in. This is what the original image looked like. There was a boarded up window that I cloned out. Going back to it. The only thing I did was make a selection of some of the little branches here, and I put those onto their own layer to help kind of reproduce what was there originally. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. I can go through some of the steps again with you guys. I'm going to zoom in on this, create a new layer, take my clone stamp tool, make sure where it says sample it says all layers, and I'm going to pick a corner, Alt click to sample, and move over. I'm also going to make my brush a little bit larger, and I'm going to make my initial clone, and I'm not going to worry about this really being perfect for this particular image because there's so many other areas that I can go and sample from. I'll kind of treat this lower section that has the shadow and everything separately. So that's pretty fast. I immediately got rid of the majority of the building, but what I see is it's reproducing some noticeable patterns. So that's why I say do an initial clone selection, and then you can go and touch this up. So I might want to get rid of this board because it's so obviously a repetition of this one. So what I would do is perhaps take another board, like this one over here, and sample that and just reproduce it over here. Something that doesn't have as many noticeable patterns on it. And I might just kind of keep working, changing up the selection here. So I'm not going to go through all the steps, but that's what you would do. And then down here, you just want to really zoom in on this section, and I would start working on the lines for the lower panels, sampling those. Go back to my clone stamp tool. In this area, I would make my brush smaller. So I'm going to grab a corner and start placing that in. And you want to make your brush smaller because you want to keep a lot of those branches. And what I'm doing is just trying to reproduce what I think should be there. Maybe I have to go and just kind of keep taking new selections. Don't be afraid to just really treat this as like you're painting an image and just create something. And I might decide to preserve the branches or to go in and get them from the tree that's here. I could just go and clone in and add some branches. So if I want to just absolutely erase what is here, that's fine. And sometimes if you clone in something that you don't intend, that's also okay, because you can just think of this as a multi-step process. So I got a little bit of something there I don't particularly like, but no problem. I'll just sample down here and go and kind of clean that up right there. So now you can sort of see how this is building. I have a new board there. I've erased a little bit of branches, and I could go and add some more. So something like this is pretty straightforward, and it's really just a matter of spending time on it. And you know, big sections you might be able to just get away and doing with a really large brush, and then zoom in and work on the smaller sections if you have to go around. If I just wanted to work in the opposite way quickly, create another one, and I could also reproduce this boarded up window. So opposite way, Alt click and move over into a corner where I think it would actually look like it exists. And of course I'm going to get the problem that I'm adding in the little bit of branches, but that's okay. I'll just go in and touch those up later, and you can see how fast that can be. And this is completely non-destructive because it's on its own layer, and I'd want to bring in the shadow as well so it looks realistic. Just kind of tracing around. And now I'm just left with some choices of what to do about those branches. I can go in and just try to sample from the area that I have here. I probably might want to put this onto its own layer as well, so that way if I'm not happy with the edits, I could go in and just get rid of those edits but keep everything else. So I might just sample from the darker yellow area here and work on this in small sections, just sampling and cleaning up the little bit of branches. So the trick that I think just to keep in mind when you're starting out cloning is constantly resample. If you don't resample and you're always just taking from the same source, you're going to end up with an image that has lots and lots of streaks in it. And you're going to see the repetition. It's just going to be like copying and pasting from your original image. You want to avoid that. So I would just think of this as resampling an image. I'm sorry, constantly going and resampling. And so this could be the process, but this will take a little bit of time. So I'm going to move. So moving over to the next image here. In this scenario, I have an area that I want to clone out, my leaves here, and they're on some bricks. So if I follow the techniques that we've been doing so far, taking my clone stamp tool and putting it onto a new layer, and let's say I sample the bricks over here and I try to put them over here, I'm going to have the problem of perspective, that the bricks that are here are larger than the bricks that should be over here. And because I'm cloning onto a new layer, I could go in and transform it and play with my scale or perspective. Here under transform, I have a lot of options that could help me. But Photoshop does have another option. Oh, I think I just hit the, no I didn't. Okay, sorry, I thought I hit my clone stamp tool for a second. It has another option, which is a filter called vanishing point. So I'm going to start out the same way. I'm going to create a new blank layer, and I'm going to go up to filter, vanishing point. And this gives me a pop-up window that shows me my image. And over here on the left-hand side, I have some tools. And the first tool that I want is to make sure that's clicked on is the Create Plane tool. What I'm going to do with this tool is it works like the polygonal lasso, where I'm going to click, let go of my mouse, and drag it out. I'm going to trace the plane that exists in my image so that Photoshop can make a mathematical calculation of the perspective. And this time when I clone, it's going to automatically going to incorporate the perspective based on the plane. So I want to draw a plane that's larger than the area I'm going to clone. I want it to include the areas that I'd want to sample from. So if it's very small, I really am not giving enough area for Photoshop to measure accurately what the perspective is in my picture. So it doesn't have to be the whole picture, but just a little bit larger. I'm going to click up here and drag, and as you can see, I'm let go of my mouse and I have this line following me. And I'm going to come over to this corner and click, and now I'm going to come down here. So I'm mapping out this plane for Photoshop. Click, create another anchor point, and now I'm going to move on over and I'm going to find an edge. Now notice, see, this would not be an accurate plane. That's not the perspective. I'm following the line of my original anchor point, and I want it to be in alignment with my last anchor point, which brings me right here to this corner. And now Photoshop has a plane to be able to accurately understand the perspective. I'm going to switch over to my clone stamp tool, and I'm going to set my source. So if I look at this image, I see I have two pink bricks, and the leaf is covering the pink bricks and a little bit of the orange. So I'm going to look for an area that is similar to clone. I'm going to come down here and alt click on the bottom of this brick. I'm trying to get right into the corner here. And as I move my mouse away, you can see I'm holding onto my sample. So that's very helpful. I can now try to line it up, to where I think that this should line up with what was actually underneath, and just gently paint it in. And you can see how beautifully Photoshop is keeping the perspective. So now I've gotten rid of my leaf. I traced in, I sampled the bricks that were over here onto here, but yet Photoshop put them in perspective. So now I'm going to click OK. And I have this done, and it's completely non-destructive. It's on its own layer, so I have my original right back there.